clumsy idiot. Look what you've done.
Wait, Michael. It's me.
Billionaire slaps pregnant black waitress, shocked when he learns she's his long-lost mother. What if I told you that sometimes the people we hurt the most are the ones who loved us first? Marcus Wellington had everything money could buy, a billion-dollar empire, luxury cars, and respect from everyone who knew his name. But on this cold Tuesday morning at Danny's diner, he was about to discover that wealth means nothing when you're face-to-face with your past. The pregnant waitress approached his table with tired eyes and a gentle smile, her name tag reading Diane. She moved carefully, one hand supporting her growing belly, the other balancing a coffee pot. Marcus barely glanced up from his phone as she poured his coffee, too absorbed in closing another million-dollar deal to notice the way her hands trembled slightly, or how her eyes lingered on his face with a recognition he couldn't see. In just a few minutes, everything Marcus thought he knew about his life would crumble.
Where are you watching from tonight?
Let me know in the comments. Marcus Wellington hadn't always been the man sitting in that diner booth. 30 years ago, he was a scared 8-year-old boy, clutching a social worker's hand as he was led away from the only home he'd ever known. The memory of that day had been buried so deep that he'd convinced himself it never happened. Success had a way of rewriting history, and Marcus had become the author of his own story, one where he was a self-made billionaire who'd clawed his way out of poverty through pure determination. But Diane remembered everything. She'd been 15 when they took Marcus away, a teenage mother who'd fought the system with every breath in her body to keep her little brother. The courts had decided she was too young, too poor, too broken to raise a child. They'd placed Marcus in foster care, and despite her desperate search over the decades, she'd never found him again. Until today. She'd recognized him the moment he walked in, even though that scared little boy had grown into a man who commanded boardrooms and owned skyscrapers. The same stubborn chin, the same way of pressing his lips together when he was thinking. Her heart had nearly stopped when she saw his name on the reservation, Marcus Wellington. He'd changed his last name, probably when he was adopted, but she'd never forgotten those intense brown eyes. For 22 years, Diane had worked 3 jobs while raising her own daughter, always keeping one ear open for news about Marcus, always hoping he was safe and happy somewhere. She'd become pregnant again at 19 and married a good man who helped her build a stable life, but she'd never stopped looking for her lost brother. Now he sat before her, scrolling through his phone like she was invisible, wearing a suit that probably cost more than she made in 6 months. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was serving coffee to the brother who'd once shared a single bed with her in their grandmother's tiny apartment, the same boy who used to help her count tips from her after-school job at the corner store. Marcus finally looked up, irritation flashing in his eyes. "Excuse me, but this coffee is cold. I specifically asked for it hot. Do you think you could manage that, or should I speak to your manager?"
The word hit Diane like a physical blow.
She dreamed of this reunion for decades, but never like this. Never with him looking through her like she was nothing, speaking to her like she was beneath his notice. Her pregnancy hormones made her emotions feel raw and overwhelming, but she forced herself to smile. "Of course, sir. I'll bring you a fresh cup right away." As she turned toward the coffee station, her hands shaking with the weight of recognition and heartbreak, Marcus returned to his phone call. He was negotiating the purchase of a small grocery chain, casually discussing the jobs that would be lost in the merger. His voice carried across the quiet diner, cold and calculating, nothing like the gentle boy who used to whisper bedtime stories to keep the scary sounds outside their window from frightening him. Diane poured fresh coffee, her mind racing with memories and the impossible decision of whether to tell him who she was. When Diane returned with the fresh coffee, her hands weren't quite steady. 22 years of wondering, of hoping, of praying that Marcus was alive and well, and here he was, treating her like a servant. She set the cup down carefully, and for a moment, their eyes met. "Better," Marcus said curtly, not bothering with please or thank you. He was already back on his phone, discussing the closure of a community center to make room for a luxury shopping complex. "No, I don't care about the local impact. Business is business." Diane felt her heart break a little more with each cruel word. This wasn't the Marcus she remembered, the little boy who'd cry when he accidentally stepped on an ant, who'd share his last piece of bread with stray cats. Success had hardened him into someone she didn't recognize. "Will there be anything else, sir?" she asked softly, hoping against hope that something in her voice might trigger a memory.
Marcus glanced up, annoyé by the interruption.
"Yes, actually. This place is a dump. The tables are sticky, the walls need painting, and frankly, The service is subpar. I'm thinking of buying this building and tearing it down. Put up something worthwhile. The casual way he discussed destroying the livelihoods of people who depended on the diner made Diane's emotions surge. This was the same building where she'd taken Marcus for ice cream on his 6th birthday, using the last of her babysitting money because she wanted to see him smile. Now he wanted to tear it down like it meant nothing. This place means a lot to people, she said quietly, her voice stronger than she felt. Some folks have been coming here for decades. It's part of the community.
I'm truly sorry.
Marcus's expression turned cold. I didn't ask for your opinion. I asked if there would be anything else. He studied her face with the calculating look of a man used to intimidating people into submission. Maybe you should focus on doing your job instead of worrying about things that are way above your pay grade. Something in Diane snapped. 22 years of wondering if her brother was safe, of blaming herself for not fighting harder to keep him, of building a life around the hope of finding him again. And he was sitting here, cruel and dismissive, ready to destroy the very community that had helped her survive after he was taken away. Her voice trembled as she spoke, pregnancy emotions making her brave in a way that normally she might not have been.
You know what?
Money doesn't give you the right to treat people like they're nothing. We're all just trying to make a living, support our families, build something meaningful. Just because you can afford to tear things down doesn't mean you should. The diner had gone quiet. Other customers were staring, sensing the tension crackling between them. Marcus's face flushed with anger at being challenged so publicly. How dare you speak to me like that, he said, his voice rising. Do you have any idea who I am? I could buy and sell this entire neighborhood.
If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumb up.
Diane straightened her shoulders, her hand instinctively moving to protect her unborn child. She'd spent years being afraid of the system that took Marcus away, afraid of poverty, afraid of being alone. But she wasn't afraid anymore. Yes, she said quietly, her eyes filling with tears. I know exactly who you are. The weight of those words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a recognition he couldn't quite place. There was something about the way she looked at him, something familiar in the sadness behind her eyes, but his anger pushed the feeling away. You don't know anything about me, he said, standing up so quickly his chair scraped against the floor. You're just some waitress who thinks she can lecture me about business. But Diane wasn't backing down anymore. The years of searching, the sleepless nights wondering if he was alive, the guilt that had eaten away at her for letting the system take him, it all came pouring out in a voice that shook with emotion. I know you used to be afraid of thunderstorms, she said, and Marcus froze. I know you had a scar on your knee from falling off your bike when you were 6. I know you used to collect bottle caps and keep them in an old shoebox under your bed. The coffee cup slipped from Marcus's hand, shattering on the floor. Those memories, buried so deep he'd convinced himself they were dreams, came rushing back like a flood. The little apartment where they'd lived with their grandmother. The way the older girl would make him peanut butter sandwiches when there wasn't anything else to eat. The night she'd held him during a thunderstorm, promising him that everything would be okay even though she was just a kid herself. That's impossible, he whispered, but his voice had lost all its authority. Those people, that life, it's gone.
My name is Diane, she said, tears streaming down her face now.
But you used to call me DD. You couldn't pronounce Diane when you were little.
The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. DD.
Sweet, brave DD who'd worked after school to help their grandmother pay rent. Who'd walked him to his first day of kindergarten and picked him up every day after. Who'd cried harder than he did the morning the social workers came. No, Marcus said, stumbling backward.
No, Hurlien.
My sister. Diane. She was just a kid. She couldn't. He looked at her more closely, really seeing her for the first time. The same green eyes, the same stubborn chin, the same gentle way of tilting her head when she was worried. I fought for you, Diane whispered, her voice breaking. For 2 years, I fought the courts, I got a lawyer. I worked 3 jobs trying to prove I could take care of you. But they said I was too young, that you needed a stable family. They said they'd found you a good home, people who could give you opportunities one never could. Marcus felt his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. All those years in foster homes, feeling abandoned and unwanted. All those nights, wondering why his sister had given up on him. She'd been fighting for him the whole time. The other customers in the diner watched in stunned silence as the powerful billionaire's facade began to crack. His hands were shaking as badly as hers now. Have you ever had to face a truth that changed everything you thought you knew about yourself? Let us know in the comments. I looked for you everywhere, Diane continued, her voice barely audible. I never stopped looking.
And when he saw your name on the reservation, when you walked in here.
I couldn't believe it.
My little Marcus, all grown up.
The revelation hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they could cross. Marcus stared at his sister, feeling every wall he'd built around his heart begin to crumble. The successful businessman who controlled billion-dollar deals suddenly felt like that 8-year-old boy again, scared and alone, wondering why the most important person in his world had disappeared. But you gave me up, he said, his voice hollow with decades of buried pain.
You let them take me away. He never gave you up.
Diane's voice cracked with the weight of 22 years of grief. They took you from me. I was 15, Marcus.
A kid trying to raise a kid.
When Grandma died, I had nothing, no job skills, no money, no family to help. The state said I couldn't provide for you, that you deserved better. She moved closer, her pregnant belly making each step deliberate and careful. I went to court 17 times. 17 times I sat in front of judges and social workers, begging them to let me keep you. I got my GED, found an apartment, worked at a grocery store, a laundromat, and cleaned offices at night just to prove I could support us both. Marcus felt his throat tighten as memories he'd suppressed for decades came flooding back. He remembered Diane walking him to school before going to her own classes. He remembered her splitting her lunch with him when their grandmother forgot to give them money for food. He remembered the way she'd held him when their grandmother had her first heart attack, promising him that she'd never let anything happen to him. They told me you'd been adopted by a good family, Diane continued, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. They said you were happy, that you'd moved to California, that it would be better for you if I didn't try to contact you. I believed them because I wanted what was best for you, even if it killed me inside. The Marcus who'd walked into the diner that morning would have scoffed at such sentiment, would have dismissed it as manipulation. But standing here, looking into the face of the person who'd loved him first and longest, he felt something fundamental shifting inside his chest. I wasn't happy, he admitted quietly. I went through 6 foster homes before I aged out of the system. Some were okay, some were not. I put myself through college, started my first business with money I earned working construction. I told myself I didn't need anyone, that the past didn't matter. You were so smart, even as a little boy, Diane said, a proud smile breaking through her tears. Always asking questions, always figuring out how things worked. I knew you'd be successful, but I never imagined. She gestured around the diner, then at his expensive suit. I'm so proud of you, Marcus. The words hit him harder than any business deal, any acquisition, any amount of money ever had. When was the last time someone had said they were proud of him? When was the last time anyone had looked at him and seen not his net worth, but simply him? If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. I have so much to tell you, Diane whispered. So many years to catch up on. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in decades, felt like he might be coming home. 2 hours later, they sat in the same booth where this extraordinary reunion had begun, the diner's afternoon rush flowing around them like water around stones. Marcus had called his assistant to cancel his meetings, something that would have been unthinkable that morning. But everything was different now. Diane had shown him pictures on her phone, her daughter Emma, now 16 and working part-time at a bookstore while dreaming of becoming a teacher. Her husband, Robert, is a kind man who'd embraced Diane's search for her lost brother as his own mission. The house they bought 3 years ago, small but filled with love and laughter. She looks like you did at that age, Marcus said, studying a photo of Emma. Same determined expression. She gets that from her aunt, Diane laughed, then grew serious. I told her about you, Marcus. About her uncle, who was taken away before she was born. She's always wanted to meet you. Marcus felt his throat tighten again. An uncle. He'd spent so many years convinced he was alone in the world that the idea of having a family, a real family who'd thought about him, who'd saved a place for him in their hearts, felt overwhelming. I want to meet her too, he said. And Robert. And. He gestured toward her belly.
This little one. Diane's face lit up with joy.
Really? Really? Marcus paused, then reached across the table to take her hand. Diane, I need to apologize. Not just for today, but for the man I became. Success made me hard, made me forget where I came from. I've spent so many years being angry at the world that I forgot how to be grateful for the good things in it. You were hurt, Diane said simply. We both were. The system that was supposed to help us ended up tearing our family apart. But look at us now, you built an empire, and I built a family. Maybe we both got what we needed to prepare us for this moment. Marcus thought about his businesses, his wealth, his reputation. For the first time, he wondered what would happen if he used his resources not just to acquire and consume, but to build and heal. What if he could help other families like theirs stay together? What if his success could mean something more than just numbers in a bank account? I don't want to tear down the diner, he said suddenly. I want to renovate it. Keep everything that makes it special, but make it better. Keep all the employees. Give them raises. Make sure families like ours have a place to gather and build memories. Diane squeezed his hand. That sounds perfect. As the afternoon sun slanted through the diner windows, Marcus Wellington realized he was exactly where he belonged. Not in a boardroom or a penthouse, but sitting across from someone who knew who he really was beneath all the success and sophistication. Someone who'd loved him when he had nothing and would love him regardless of everything he'd built. The scared little boy who'd been taken away 22 years ago was finally coming home. If you enjoyed this story of family, forgiveness, and second chances, please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments about the importance of family connections, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories that remind us what truly matters in life. Thank you for joining Marcus and Diane on their journey back to each other.